Hello and welcome to podcast Values and Vibes. Today we're going to talk about value of authenticity. You have probably heard phrases like be yourself, authenticity is a key, but what does it really mean to live authentically? We have two wonderful guests from Revalue 180, CEO and founder Tia Lancaster and Louisa Bulow, Business Psychologist. Together, we're going to answer a fundamental question. Why is authenticity so important in our lives? So sit back, relax, and enjoy a chat about value of being yourself. Welcome to this episode. Today we're going to talk about Word of the Year by Merriam-Webster. For word for 2023, it's authenticity. Tia, my guest from Revalue 180, and Louisa, they're going to explain much better. So what is value of authenticity and why it's so important? Why it's so essential in this world?
Well, I'll start. I'll let Louisa give the official R180 or Revalue 180's definition of authenticity. But to me, if I was just going to say, what do you believe is authenticity? I would say it's to be real, to be who you are, walk your talk, like be the same person inside the office and outside the office and say what you mean and mean what you say. And I guess be real is what I would say to my daughters if you're going to be authentic.
Yeah, I basically echo that. But for me, it's about bringing character, but like your character, what is that? So we were actually talking about when we do our team workshops with R180, doing something on getting people to think at the beginning. So if someone's going to write an important milestone birthday speech about you, what would they say? And the things that you want to hear in that, for me, is what would be authenticity. It's your character. It's what you want to be known by, I guess. And someone therefore is practicing authenticity, is really walking their talk and living the character that they have inside.
That's true. And another activity too is, writing that 40th birthday speech that you want your friend to give for you. It's something, especially I think in your 20s, I've had a couple of people do it, and it's very interesting to read them. And I think it forces people to be really honest with themselves. And also, people don't like doing this one as much, and I don't blame them because it does seem a little bit dark, but sometimes even the epitaph, like what would you want to be remembered on your gravestone? Like what, it's oftentimes like when people retire and they reflect and they retire from their long careers, like, well, what really will I be remembered for? Is it going to be because I spent those extra 600 hours in the office where I could have been doing some of the things that are more meaningful to me with my family, my friends, my partner, what have you. So I think that really does define authenticity well.
Yeah, and that's a good one because when I think about that, sometimes it actually makes me a little bit emotional because I think, what have I left behind? And what are people in the room going to be thinking? Like, that was Louisa. But our definition for authenticity is to be true and genuine with myself and others. And it's important to know that with that is myself. So it's not just projecting that authenticity, but doing it for what you feel is right. And I think everyone knows you feel a bit funny or you feel a bit weird when you've done something that is inauthentic. You're like, that didn't feel quite. It's like wearing a style that really isn't yours. If I went out in really bright colors, I would feel a bit self-conscious. It's almost like that with authenticity.
It's true. It's like even wearing your hair a different way or just anything different that makes you feel maybe, it shouldn't really relate to an feeling of insecurity, but maybe it does in some ways. If I think that I always would tell my daughters when they were growing up is like, they had boyfriends or problems with friends or what have you, is if you're going through the motions and you're not really there and you're not really participating with your full self, then why even do it? And I think that's what it means to be authentic it's authenticity. Really, I think there's a few values in the R180 model that kind of jump out at you as being ones that kind of are standard practice for living, maybe a good life. I think, we mentioned courage a couple of weeks ago. Courage is just, if you don't have courage to activate all these things in your life, you're not going to be able to make a lot of change. So I think that courage is one of those important ones, but authenticity as well, because if you choose certain values and you prioritize things in your life, and even when you're choosing blockers, those unconscious biases that we ask people to do in the training. If you're being inauthentic and not answering those things honestly, then you're never going to really get a true read of yourself. So I do think that Louisa's correct. And I think authenticity might even relate more to yourself than it does to others, because I think how we are within ourselves is what we reflect upon the world. And so I think that that's very true. And that's really, that was a very insightful point, Louisa.
How to be professional at work and be authentic, you know?
I don't think they're separate things, if I'm honest, because in a way, I can speak for myself then maybe. If I feel like I'm having my own opinions and I'm bringing who I really am and my character, if you like, and wearing my colours when I come in, and knowing that things I say come from a good place of what I really think, I don't see how it's different.
It might be a little different, to be honest, like just only because I'm only reflecting on that. I agree with you, but I mean, because you take you with you. And if you're trying to be authentic, then you should be the same wherever you are. However, part of our model, if you think about it, comes down to an evolution of values. And I think that what I learned from interviewing the Wall Street individuals in my dissertation study with values is that there were particular values that they all ended up choosing honesty as their number one value, as of importance. And honesty is often intertwined with authenticity, as many values are in our model. You know, some people believe authenticity is the same as being truly honest with yourself and others, because if you're authentic, you are being honest about who you are and what you're doing. But what I learned from them is that those individuals, those traders and bankers on Wall Street that couldn't evolve their values to the changing circumstances of life, struggled to maintain their positions, maybe even lost their jobs, because you can still truly be authentic, but you might have to be measured in your authenticity. You know, maybe you work in an environment where it's, you know, standard dress is to be more, you know, you're a lawyer and you're supposed to come in a suit to work because that's what people wear as lawyers. But you come to work in, like, I don't know, a tutu or you know, like whatever it is, like your princess costume. That would be maybe authentic to you, but there are still rules of engagement. So I think that the value doesn't have to, the value in and of itself, it doesn't have to change, but you do have to evolve with the changing circumstances. Does that make sense? Because I think that, like, if it might be true to you,
I guess you're saying it's more of how it manifests, right? So how the authenticity is coming out for that person. So
I think I think you have to maybe qualify with professionalism. I mean, it might not be authentic of you, you know, it's not very professional to, like, speak your mind on every single thing, like, to your boss, like you don't like his tie, or maybe, you know, he's like, you can't stand one of his children. I mean, maybe a really authentic person, as an honest person, would say, I had a Wall Street guy tell me that honesty was so important to him that he didn't care about climbing the corporate totem, quote unquote. He's like, I don't care. I'm going to say what I mean. Always be completely transparent and honest. And I said, well, and we talked about that. And I said, okay, I get that, because if that's being truly authentic to yourself, then that makes sense. But you also have to balance the rules of engagement around your own authenticity and honesty, if that makes sense.
Should they be more flexible? Because, okay, you're authentic, you know, you're true yourself. Why do you need to, you know, put every day, like, your opinion, like it's the most important, you know?
Well, right. I mean, if it's being unprofessional in that particular environment, but you don't want to be that, this is something that's really important to you, then you're probably in the wrong work environment, is what I would tell that person.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If you can't be your authentic self there, and you want to wear whatever costume you want to wear, or dress the way you do, or maybe, you know, what have you, whatever it is that the office, the professional code of conduct is in your particular law firm, doctor's office, engineering company, whatever it is, you know, whatever the ethos of that company is, if it doesn't match with your own authenticity and you can't evolve yours to kind of fit in it a little bit, but still be real, then it's not probably the right place for you, I think. But I don't know.
I guess you have to be careful with how you then moderate it, right? So if you feel like you need to be in this black and white corporate environment in a suit every single day, and that isn't authentic to yourself, you're right.
Yeah.
Perhaps there's another way you can express your authenticity out of work. I don't know. I do guess I struggle to see in my head when you first asked it, Milena, I'm almost thinking like they're separate things, being authentic or being professional, but I see them as very much something that can be matched together. And yeah, there
I
is
agree.
harmony with it. You don't want to sit in front of somebody saying every single opinion you have, but still it doesn't mean that the opinion you do have is then wrong. It's about how you express it then, and how you learn to moderate your value, perhaps.
Right. It's
So
the
maybe
evolution.
I'm seeing it as attitudes and beliefs and what you're feeling and your opinions. And I guess it is more than that as well. It's how you
Well,
want it.
I guess that's why we do have space in our model when we, especially when we write the long reports for an evolution of values, because people oftentimes, when we've talked about this before, and when whatever zone you might be strong in, if you're overusing values, they might need to be some evolution of that value. Because if you're doing honesty or authenticity at no cost in every single environment you go into, and you're not moderating certain behaviors that suit the particular circumstances that you're in, you might have some repercussions. If you're okay with those repercussions, like this particular trader told me that he sacrificed climbing the corporate totem for his honesty, then but what I determined in my dissertation is that those bankers and traders who had the most longevity on Wall Street didn't sacrifice their values, but they learned how to evolve them to the changing circumstances. Like I had one tell me that honesty was also most important to him, but he realized that he could only be as honest and authentic as the job allowed him with his subordinates. He was as transparent as possible, but there was certain information from the top where sometimes they couldn't understand the reasoning for a certain decision that he or she could not share because they just weren't at liberty. So that's where I think professionalism basically collides oftentimes, or has to be massaged a little bit together.
Well, for me, then professionalism shapes your authenticity.
Yeah, likely. But it's not the shape you like, then you're in the wrong spot.
Yeah.
You know? And tell me, for younger crowd, how can we stay authentic in the age of social media?
I'd say it's really important to remember, and it's shown all over social media, that what you see is not always what's happening, right? If you take quite honestly, if I take a really crap photo of myself, that's not going anywhere. Like, we take the time to actually put the things out there in the world that we think other people actually want to see. I actually think a lot of people use social media to make other people jealous. Like, look at me here, look at me there.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I mean, the question is that authentic to yourself?
I don't know if it's possible to be completely authentic in the world of social media. And I think that precisely lies at the core of a lot of sadness and depression among young people. Because I think that when you're always looking to see what you don't have, or someone being skinnier or prettier or having more material possessions, and I think that lies at the heart of our model. And I think that that's something that we discuss in the third P when we talk about, it's great that we've identified our values and now we see what's blocking our values. But in order to practice them and then perpetuate maybe new values that were lost or forgotten, we need to take those pressures we're feeling, and that pressure, societal pressure that a lot of young people feel from social media, it really does take away their authenticity. And they need to somehow realize that if they carry that pressure with them and they don't basically put it on their lap and really pursue what matters to them and really become a dancer or a writer, even if it's not what the rest of the world looks like, or I think that's a tough balancing act. And I think that's really comes down to the mindfulness aspect of our model is how can I live in the social media world, but not let it control my world. And I think if we can give these young people the values, help them isolate the things that are really important to them, maybe they'll spend less time focusing on and actually spend less time posting and less time comparing themselves to others. And oh, what a perfect world we'd have if we could do that.
Can you share an experience how cultural norms can shape our view of authenticity?
I don't think we have enough cross-cultural research yet. I think it's going to be very interesting 10 years from now. And I think we'll be able to talk a lot about that. I see, not specifically with the word authenticity, we already see trends culturally. We see people that are coming from collectivist societies throughout Europe tend to be, their stronger zones tend to be competing zones. And I think that's because that's how they're raised, that you give as much to the community at large via taxes and want to have nice parks and and nice services and healthcare as you do to yourself. So that's kind of inbred in you. So maybe that does relate to authenticity because that's just part of your authentic core, possibly, but I don't know it relates specifically to authenticity. But I do know that I think if I was going to guesstimate or make a hypothesis, I think that being authentic, your authentic self is probably shaped by whatever culture you come from. And so I think that I spoke with a linguist about the model a long time ago, and he argued with me for several hours about why my model would never work in Japan. And I said, why? And he's like, well, because the Japanese just have completely different values. And I said, I understand that, but this is a cross-cultural model that has been based upon values across the world. Just because he's like, well, they value work to the point of you see them sleeping in subways and sleeping on their desks. I mean, it's just work, 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 work. And I said, okay, but they still have lost or forgotten values, but their cultural norms and values are centered around those things. So that what it means to be an authentic Serbian woman versus what it means to be an authentic American woman or English woman or Swedish woman, since Louisa has both, will be different. And I guess I wouldn't know exactly what it means culturally for them to feel authenticity, unless I actually spoke with women across cultures and men.
There's like two things in this question. There's cross-culturally values, right? And all 52 of our values will be chosen slightly different across cultures. And when we do get to do that research, it will be fascinating to see. And I predict there will be certain trends with certain zones or certain values cross-culturally. But that doesn't mean that we're very different. It's just that the value systems that culturally happen are shaped by, traditions that really have come from that cultural environment that's there and how people have evolved. And then I think the other side is like for you, Milena, your inner compass, which is what your value system really is going to tell you how your authenticity is going to manifest differently now you're in the US versus when you're in Serbia. So I think
right, and that's all about transitions.
And that's about the transitions.
Yeah, so that's true. So that's, I mean, and that's a big part of what our Evaluate's all about, is what values research tells us that as we go through big transitions, childhood to adolescence, adolescence to adulthood, marriage, single to marriage, divorces, choosing your sexuality or whatever it may be, in those transitions, certain values drop off and certain ones are picked up and certain ones evolve. So what you believe to be an authentic Serbian woman, you've probably evolved into being an authentic Serbian/American woman now, So
American woman.
Yeah, exactly.
My daughter is 3 years old now. How can I help her to stay authentic to herself? And, because I think when I'm telling her, don't do that, don't do this, behave like this, I'm just trying to help her to be more socially accepted. What is.
I feel like I'm not a mother myself, but
you're a daughter.
You're setting the rules and you're setting the playground, and how she plays with the toys in the playground and is going to come a little bit from her. Of course, she's going to see how you act and behave, but I think you're currently laying some foundations, would be my guess, and the values are going to start to come a little bit later. So telling her don't do that isn't, I don't know, I would wonder if that's
I do think, I mean, I think that's a good answer from the perspective of a daughter being raised. I think that really, honestly though, that Erdis as your daughter will develop her value system and her authenticity just looking at her parents. They're the closest examples. And if you tell her to be kind to the doorman or the valet, and then you slap them in the face or, are despicable when you walk by, then that's how she's going to be. I think that our actions speak a lot louder than our words. And that's why with leaders, with our model, the whole idea of creating a value profile for a company and attaching it to leaders is let's match your behaviors and your actions to these words, because that will garner a lot of stakeholders throughout a company, as it will garner a lot of stakeholders throughout a family,
And
And also when I was speaking with people and when I was preparing for the episode, a lot of them told me when you want to be authentic, that means like you're a little bit selfish and oblivious, like you want to show off, you want to, and what is your opinion about that? Should you be authentic no matter what?
I guess it speaks to
yeah,
the
go ahead.
balance. It's the
Yeah.
balance, right? So we've talked about this in every episode because it's very important to note that any value can be underused and any value can be overused. You can not be doing enough of it and you'll be doing too much. So it's the example of if you're going to train to run for a marathon, well, if you sit on the sofa eating McDonald's every day, that's probably too little. And if you're out running every single day and then doing a HIIT workout and then do this, that, you're probably going to get a repetitive strain injury and not be able to run it either. So it's that balancing act. I've gone for extremes on either end, but it is a balancing act in the middle. So if we take authenticity too far, and I would actually say if we take it too far, it's not necessarily just how you described it, Milena, but it's more like not considering how being true to myself actually impacts other people and the wider actions of that.
No, that's exactly true. I mean, it's a kind of just exactly the same as being professional. I mean, you have to moderate and evolve your values for changing life circumstances. And basically, early turn of the century psychologists, Rogers and Skinner, have said that very thing. They said that actually with values, and there was a limited amount of research that you can find with them, but they talk about how I think Rogers actually speaks about how when we're born, there's no judgment, and up until about age 2, we're just taking the world in based on like fight or flight, or that looks pretty, and look, the sun, first time you see the sunrise or feel grass underneath your feet, those are all, there's no judgment. It's when language comes in and we start to model what our parents and our siblings are doing, where our values become more conceived. And then as they become more conceived, that's when we have to learn how to moderate them, change how we use them for our changing life experiences. And I think that that's, good example. Sophia, my middle child. Okay. I would say that her never lacked confidence. And when she was probably Erdis's age up to 4, 5, 6, 7, those younger years, she's always been the tallest. She was a pretty girl and she was always very smart. With that came an early onset of, she did have confidence because she knew that, but she needed to moderate that confidence. And that was something that every day on the way to school, we would talk about. I would say, okay, when you've been blessed and you have a lot of these great things that you've been born with, you need to be a good leader because other kids are going to be watching you. And if you go to school and you misbehave and you don't follow the rules and, you just always, that would be an idea of her always being authentic, knowing the answer to everything and being kind of like the boss in the class and thinking that she knows better. That would be a terrible way to be authentic. So I think that if I go back to like a learning lesson of a young child, I think my instruction to her every day before she'd get out of the car at school, I can still see her in her little school uniform. I would say, "What are you going to be today, Sophia?" And she'd say, "A good leader." But I mean, I really had to do that with her because, she had that persuasive and her authentic self. She's authentically able to her opinions are strong. People will follow her. So let's moderate and figure out how we can be as authentic as possible and also be a good example. Does that make sense? And kind of what you were saying, Louisa, how we can maybe take that authenticity and not turn it into being selfish, like running, like you said, as an example, where every single thing, like every meal revolves around you having a specific amount of calories, and every event around you with your family and friends comes down to your run and your exercise. I mean, that might be authentic to you, but now it's just borderline selfish.
Yeah. And that's a really good way to put it. I know people who are very into their fitness and what they want to eat. And actually, sometimes when you speak to their other half who they live with, it's a little bit frustrating at times because for them, it's authentic. It's like, well, I need to do this. I need to eat. I need to just going with our example. And at that point, you haven't actually considered how that lands for other people. And that's why authenticity sits in personal empowerment, because yes, it completely empowers you. It's about, what do I want? What's my character? Who am I bringing into the room today?
Right.
But too much of that is, okay, well, hold on a minute, because what are other people seeing as well?
Completely. And we learned that, and actually in our leadership and behavior class, or I forgot exactly the exact name of it, with Tobias Mortlock, and I remember this implicitly, her speaking about having, like, even it was a lecture on authentic leadership and what it means to be authentic. Okay, an authentic leader still has many faces. And she talked about how in order to get people that you are leading amidst a team or a company or a family, you have to reveal and like a little bit about yourself. She would talk about, like, you have to lift up your shirt a little bit and tell a little bit about me and be maybe open and honest. But there's different faces for different meetings and different interactions. So you can still be an authentic leader and have a lot of faces. The face you take maybe to the boardroom, the face you take maybe to having a happy hour with the office. I mean, I think you can have many facets and faces to your personality and still be authentic.
My last question, if you can make like your opinion, and if you can tell me in which direction society is going, if the word of the 2022 was gaslighting, and now word of authenticity, it's a word of the year for 2023. What we can expect for 2024? What word would be?
Can I just answer this? Because I was in the car today for 5 hours and listening to the BBC. Got to do a segue here, but no, listening to the BBC was really interesting because show after show on the talk, like one of the more of the talking branches of the BBC rather than the music one, was about people needing to rediscover themselves. It was about people needing to take some time out to actually review what they want in their life, especially with the new year coming in. Then the next show would be about kind of that well-being and people actually very stressed because they're not stopping. And every single show that was coming on, and I said it to my partner and he was kind of over his head driving, but I was like, whoa, this relates exactly to what we're doing at Revaluate. And it's about like actually slowing down. And we talked about it in episode 1 when we said we're all very connected and we're so disconnected with ourselves and what we want. And I mean, authenticity, I read it, to be true and genuine with myself and others. And going into a new year, I think a lot of people feel that value of authenticity when it comes to the 30th and 31st, and you start thinking, oh gosh, what am I going to do? What am I going to the next year with? And I think everybody is talking about it now. You just need to turn the radio on and that'll be a conversation they're having.
It's so true. And we do talk a little bit about that, but the problem we face with people kind of rediscovering themselves, and it's a new year and making New Year's resolutions, is that those are goals, right? And we talk a lot about that in the model. The goals usually do fall by the wayside and we disappoint and we don't lose that 5 kilos we wanted to lose, or we're not patient like we want to be with maybe our husband or partner or children. However, but when we can work with something like our values model, like Revaluate 180, and we can underpin our goals with truly what we value, we will begin to accomplish some of those things and be able to be truly authentic people. I don't know what the next word will be. I think that with the rise of AI and artificial intelligence, and that even hinges on what does it mean to be authentic? Are we still as authentic that we can present now our training model via our avatar? I think so, because we've worked really hard to train her in all of our values research over the last 5 years, and really trained her to understand the model and teach it to her in the same way that we hoped to communicate it. So I think we're in a new world. And I think that, so you're asking, so what will be the word of the next year?
Let's
like,
just guess.
You're right. So move from gaslighting to
authenticity. And see what we choose.
Hard.
I choose empathy. Especially because of artificial intelligence and everything. I think empathy is going to be a word of 2024.
And I think you're right, or maybe some broad-mindedness. I think there's a lot of division going on in our world right now with multiple conflicts around the globe, and I think that people are starting to really feel whatever sides they decide to fall on or choose. That really, I think that when people become more broad-minded, as maybe we move forward into the next year, they'll start to believe that we're really all about everyone living in life and people not dying, maybe. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see, but I think that the people are so divided across the world. Maybe broad-minded would be the next word that could come to mind? Or
I'm
collaborative?
more thinking what I hope, it was just before you said empathy, Milena, is I hope that understanding would be one. And it's on a similar thing. It's you don't know what somebody has gone through or are going through, or what's potentially coming up for them. I mean, they don't even know at that point. So just having a bit of understanding for other people in their space, and probably understanding for ourselves as well.
Yeah, and that's probably that's a great point. I think that's probably to end on a good note, especially with you having a 3-year-old. I think that's probably the greatest lesson you teach your children is that when their feelings have been hurt or they're possibly being bullied or teased at school, is you don't want to hear it when you're the child. But typically the best thing a parent can say is you don't know what that child is going through, and they're being a bully or being a certain way for a reason. And so I think that empathy, understanding, kindness, maybe all of those global vision values, we'll start to embrace more.
Yeah, we're gonna see in 2024. I'm gonna go back to this episode. And thank you so much for this amazing subject and amazing value. And
Yes.
we're gonna speak a lot. We have 50 more values to speak about. So thank you so much for watching us, and stay with us, and see you soon.
See you soon. Happy New Year, everyone.